All right, so we've created paragraphs, headers, we've created an entire HTML structure, we've done all sorts of stuff. But if you've tried to create a paragraph with new lines in it, it's not going to work. So I'm going to create an example where I have a paragraph, but I want to make a new line. Now I could use a different paragraph, but sometimes I just want to put something on a new line just for the sake of putting things on a new line. Or if you add multiple spaces, it's not going to work. Now the reason for that is because HTML is not space sensitive. By being not space sensitive, it can actually compress how much it has to process, and it doesn't have to think too much about extra spaces unless we explicitly tell it to. Now that is both a good thing, and as a developer, sometimes it's a little bit annoying. So what we are going to do is I'm going to demonstrate how HTML doesn't really care about white space. It just sort of compresses it together, and then how we can get around that. So I'm going to create a new file, and I'm going to call this line breaks.html. Yeah, sure, line breaks. Yeah, that's good enough. Let's go ahead and create a paragraph. So just a regular paragraph in here. And I'm going to say, I am on line 1. I am on line 2. I am on line 3. So let's go ahead and open this up in our browser. I'm using Firefox. You can use Chrome, Safari, it doesn't really matter. And you see here that says, I am on line 1, I'm on line 2, I'm on line 3. It's all on the same line. That's not good. So let's view our source. In our source code, we can see that it's all on 3 separate lines. So what's the deal with that? Now again, we have this new line in here, and your browser is saying, you know what? Just because there's a new line in here doesn't necessarily mean that's what you want. Now, when we're writing HTML, that can be a little bit annoying, but when we start writing server-side languages, like maybe we're using Python or PHP or something like that, this is actually somewhat of a savior. But how do we get these onto new lines? Well, there's one way. We can add a new paragraph, and we can say line 1, we can make line 2, and we can make line 3. Refresh our page, and you can see that there's nice spacing between all of those. But what if we want them to be more together? What if we don't want to write paragraphs for every single thing? What if we just said, you know what, I'm done with paragraphs. Let's get rid of these. Let's go down here. I select all of these, hit Command left bracket, and it indents or outdents. It gets rid of the indentation for me. And then again, same thing. It looks the exact same. So when I view the page source, again, they're on 3 lines. Why is that? So the way we get around this is we add a thing called a break, a BR, or sometimes you'll see it like this, or sometimes you'll see it like this. We'll talk about the difference a little bit later. And let's add, just so that we have one more in here, let's add a 4th line. Ta-da! We have 4 lines. And so let's make that bigger because that is going to be hard to see. So I'm on line 1, 2, 3, and 4. That is good news. That is how we do it. Now we can do this inside of a paragraph as well. So let's go ahead, and I'm just going to cut that and paste it in here. And that did some auto formatting for me. That was nice. Literally nothing changes. Well, I mean, visually nothing changes, but in our code, it does actually change. So we can see we've got a paragraph tag here and here. And yeah, that's just about it. That's all we have to do to make a new line. Now let's talk about spacing. So let's create a horizontal rule, and let's talk about spacing. What if I wanted to say the space between here and here? Well, because HTML doesn't really care about white space, it just sort of pushes it all together. All these spaces are not going to show up. So let's take a look. It says the space between here and here. Okay, well, that's not useful. And again, if we just view source, we're going to see that all the spaces are in there. And again, that's just because this is the source code. And when your browser reads the source code, it says, oh, there's a bunch of spaces. Let me get rid of that for you. It thinks it's being helpful. So to get around this, we create this thing called an HTML entity. We're going to talk about entities on their own a little bit later, but the first one we need to know about is the NBSP, the non-breaking space, which you can actually see right here. That's pretty cool. Non-breaking space. So, and the ampersand, NBSP, and then a semicolon, and that's how we create an HTML entity. Now, what this says is basically put a space here, put a bunch of spaces in here. So let's go ahead and add a ton of these and refresh our page. And now we actually have some spacing. Again, let's go ahead and view the source code. We see all these HTML entities, these non-breaking spaces. But when we view the actual page, it just looks like regular spacing. We can even copy and paste it normally. So if I copy and paste it into here, it just shows up as a regular space. So the browser is fairly intelligent that way. Now your task for this video is to create a paragraph with 4 different lines on it. And then I want you to add a line break, just the BR tag. Don't worry about this guy or that one. Just add this one, the BR tag, the break tag. Add that at the end of each line so that each line shows up on its own line. And then when you're done that, I would also like you to add NBSP. So use this HTML entity, use it 4 or 5 times in a row so that you can actually see some spacing. Maybe even put it between some words here. So the space between, well, the space between these 2 words, I guess. So do something along those lines, play with it a little bit, and sort of just get a feel for how HTML doesn't really care about extra spacing. So it doesn't, again, just as an example, it doesn't matter if we do this, nope. It still looks the exact same. Go ahead, give that a shot, and when you're ready, let's move on to the next video.